Nail that, would you?
Hey everyone, it's Cal here, and it's the episode you've all been waiting for. Finally, I'm revealing the truck that this motor is going into. We're going to start finishing up the 366 project. The 366 is right here in the same state that you last saw it in, except now there's a lot of dust on it. So I apologize for the delay in the continuation of this series. I know you guys have really been supporting it. Up to 110,000 views on the first video, 26 or 27,000 on the second one. I hope this one does just as well. Thanks a lot, you guys, for supporting it. I know this is kind of a non-traditional engine swap for one of these trucks, so I'm happy to do a series on it. This is the truck. I'll go into more detail of it in a different video, and that video is going to be entitled it's going to be what I look for when I'm buying a project truck. Stuff that I watch out for, deal breakers, deal makers, price ranges, that kind of thing for Midwestern Canada, which is where I'm located. Real quick, I'll just go through this truck. It's an 85 GMC High Sierra 4x4. It looks like hammered shit, but it's actually not bad for Midwestern Canada status. The paint is absolutely destroyed, but there's really not a lot for rust holes. The rear quarters are okay, the doors are okay, the front fenders are good. The hood's in the box. It's in really nice shape, actually. And the front end and whatnot seems to be all right for what it is. It's just a good old four-wheel drive, four-speed truck. I'll be putting the 366 in it. It's got an SM465 four-speed manual in it. We'll be using a used flywheel, a used clutch and pressure plate, hoping the tranny works. I've already had to do some messing around with the clutch slave and reservoir. So we're going to see if I can even get the hydraulic clutch set up to work, that sort of thing. We're going to start the video off today with getting the 366 prepped up with its flywheel, its bell housing, its clutch and all that. Basically getting it ready to put into the 85. So join me with this video. It might be a longer one, and that's okay. I know you guys won't mind seeing the down and dirty tech of me putting this motor in here. So stick around here and we'll get this 366 prepped. We're going to start over here on the shelf of many things. I've got an old bell housing, clutch, pressure plate. I think there's a flywheel in here, but I've got another one off to the side anyways. I'm just going to see what all we got buried in here. This is just a bunch of parts and stuff that a person acquires over the years. I don't even know what this is. 153 tooth starter, cuz. Okay. Find all this U-joints and stuff. There it is. Looks like there is a flywheel there, which makes sense. And funny enough, all this stuff actually came off the 305 that was put into my 6-liter LS truck. And I kept, obviously, all of it because the 305 was blown up. I kept all this stuff off that 305 when I pulled it out of the LS truck. So this is all going to be used parts. And I don't know how well you can see in there, but nothing was stored correctly, so to speak. It was just stored as you see it. There's been no special treatment for the sake of the video. So let's see all that we got in here. There's a dipstick in here too. Wonder why. Oh, here we go. Oh. All right, we got our minty fresh flywheel and clutch components here. Lots of dirt and crap on there, but looks like I left the stuff kind of like loosely threaded onto the flywheel, so that's probably good. I think this one's a neutral balance flywheel, so we'll probably use this one. And let's just get some of the brackets and shit out of here. That's a good bracket right there. I've got my alignment tool. That's a good thing. See how badly I can pinch my fingers. Okay. So we've got a throw out bearing. It looks, that's probably okay. I don't know. We'll see. I've got a fork. All this came out of a Z-bar truck, so we're going to see what all I have to do to make this work with a hydraulic slave. Couple bolts. I thought I had transmission bolts in here, but I guess not. Okay, well, here it is. I'll probably take the Z-bar pivot off this bell housing. I've got a couple other bell housings. I think I might have gotten a hydraulic slave bell housing with this truck. I can't remember, it was a while ago. So first things first, I'm gonna take my flywheel here. Well, let's take a look at the clutch, I guess. I never actually drove it, so maybe this clutch is garbage. Stuff off here. It's only 2 volts holding it, that's good. Cal spec. There we go. Let's see what we got here. Okay, pressure plate. Oh, look at that. That's a win if I've ever, oh, this is my fingerprint, I'll have to wipe off. That's a win if I've ever seen one right there. We'll definitely be using that pressure plate. That's sweet. The clutch disc, a little bit dirty and greasy, but I'd say it looks not bad actually. That'll probably be just fine. I will give it a spray with brake clean, obviously. If I can get my alignment tool out of here. There we go. Okay. And this flywheel looks really good too. We're not going to use the good flywheel though. We're going to use the junky flywheel because I don't know anything about it. Allegedly this truck drove, that all these 4-speed parts came out of it, drove pretty good before it blew up. So I'm just going to set off that flywheel to the side and let it get to the state that that one's in, and then go back and do something with it. I'll just get rid of this. So we know we've got a good clutch pressure plate. This flywheel has obviously spent some time not really doing much of anything. It's got lots of fuzzy on it and goodness. We'll probably just leave all that on. But I am going to get this resurfaced. So I'll be right back. I'm just going to get this thing resurfaced. Alright, I've got my resurfacing tool here. This is a heavily used 40 grit flapper disc on an angle grinder that has very little charge left in it. And we're just going to give this thing a quick resurfacing job. I know you guys are going to absolutely rip me to shreds about this in the comments section, but I just did one of these a while ago like this, and it turned out perfectly, so. And the battery is dead. Alright, got a fresh new battery. Let's get to resurfacing again. Alright, now that I've got my flywheel resurfaced, we're going to get this thing on the crane. And I'm going to go ahead and attach all those 4-speed parts to the back of this big block. Alright, now that I got the 366 in the air with way too small of a front exhaust bolt holding the chain in the front, and actually a pretty good 5/8 grade A bolt in the back, I'm going to pull this dowel pin, try to pull this dowel pin out of the crank. If I can't get it out, we're just going to grind it flat and act like it wasn't there in the first place. But I'm actually going to try to get it out first. And these are just like any old small block, big block Chevy that's neutral balance. So not a 454, it's equivalent to a 350. So I've got a neutral balance flywheel here. I just got to find a pilot bushing from either another one of my engines Or if I can get one from one of the clutch kits I have laying around, that'll be fine too, but we do need a pilot bushing for this. And let's get this flywheel on here. Let's pull that dowel out. Alright, I tried and there was going to be absolutely no way that dowel was coming out, so I did what probably a lot of you would frown upon, which was just angle grinding off the stud. I tried not to attack the actual flange too bad. I think it'll be okay. We're going to test fit the flywheel on here and see what we can do. Again, in your own stuff, maybe you'll want to pull that pin out the right way. I paid $400 for this engine. I still don't even know if it runs. I haven't fired it up on the stand or anything. I figure if it doesn't run, well, I do have a really clapped out 350 sitting in the corner. Maybe you can see it in the back of the shot on a stand over there. It's just covered in grease. It does run though. I ran it on the stand. So worst case scenario, if this doesn't work, I'll put that clapped out 350 in this truck instead. So let's just go ahead and see what our flywheel thinks about attaching itself to a big block Chevy. Oh yes. Like a glove, really snug over that center, just how we want it. Just gonna grab a mallet and tap this thing on the rest of the way. Try to rotate it a bit maybe. I'm not using a hammer on this. I don't want to dent up and damage the flywheel, so just got a rubber mallet here. Alright, that's not bad. I think the bolts will suck it on the rest of the way. Let me go grab some hardware. I've dug through the bin of bolts and I have found a bunch of flex plate / flywheel bolts. Now, I got them here. You're going to want to watch for this. A lot of you know this, that flywheel bolts, they're fine thread. And let me see if this will focus today. Hello? Doesn't want to focus. Okay. You'll notice that flywheel / flex plate bolts, they are fine thread. And there's actually two kinds. We've got the one I'm holding in my hand here. This is for a standard, aka a flywheel. It's a lot thicker, a lot longer bolt. It's meant for thicker application, and this one is a lot smaller. That's for an automatic. So when you're doing this kind of swap, it's tough to see with the motor in the background, but you get what I mean. You can't really use the short one on a flywheel. So I've got 6 long ones here. I'm also not a believer in Loctite. But on every vehicle I've ever done, there is one bolt I put Loctite on, and it's the flex plate / flywheel bolts. If that bitch comes loose when it's in the car, that is a huge pain in the ass to fix, pulling the transmission motor or whatever. If I'm going to install one of those, I want to never have to replace any of that stuff until it needs a clutch or something. I don't want it to come loose in 1000K and then I have to rip it all apart just to tighten it again. So I've got this Chinesium special thread locker here. It's red and it's permanent, and it says on the bottle, sealing for screw, high strength permanent locking. So it probably came with some wheel spacers or something in the past. I don't really know. All I know is it's Loctite and it's the cheap stuff, and it'll be just fine for these little bolts. You guys are also going to give me flack for that, but that's okay. I also generally don't really use a torque wrench on my flex plate bolts. My impact hammers them down pretty good, so we're just gonna do that as normal operating procedure. Grab my impact. And I'm not so much of a hack that I'm going to gun them all the way in one at a time. We're going to get them all started, go in a circle, snug them up gradually, just like that. It's started. Make sure we get our red Chinese goop on all these beauties. I'm going to go in a cross pattern just like I would on the wheel of a car. Oops, that's a lot of Loctite on there. And the other thing with this too, this engine is never going to make so much power where it's going to hurt or injure anything by, you know, this is not a high performance application by any means, I'll just say that. I'm happy with that. It stopped moving. None of the bolts are sticking out of the back. They're the right length. I'm just going to do one more all on a circle, make sure they're all tight. Alright, that is installed. Alright, it's now about 10 days later. I had to end up ordering a bunch of parts for this truck because I couldn't find a pilot bushing, so ordered a pilot bushing. I'm going to install it here, and I've got a clutch slave, clutch master, got some brake components and stuff, so I'm going to get this thing all put together and see if we can sauce this big block in the truck today. Alright, so we've got our new used clutch, our new used flywheel pressure plate, new used bell housing all mounted and installed here. First I had this fork in, and this is from a different truck with a manual Z-bar style clutch. So I put that in and it was hitting the bracket for the slave, so I wasn't sure if I actually had the right fork, but I guess the bell housing came with one, or one of my bell housing deals in the past did. So I've got the right fork in here now with the throw-out bearing. And it's got enough clearance here that the slave will work good, and we'll be able to actually run a hydraulic clutch on this, which will be sweet. I've never had an old school vehicle with a hydraulic clutch. I had a 66 Beaumont, and it's got a Z-bar 4-speed. I've only really driven Z-bar 4-speed, so it'd be nice to have the hydraulic slave there. I've just got to peel an oil pressure fitting out of this engine in the front and the back here. I've got to plug the one up front and the one here, and I'm going to put an oil pressure sensor on the front corner. Kind of a common big block Chevy spot, but if you had your doubts, here you go. Neutral balance flywheel, your standard truck clutch, 11-inch, just a standard truck bell housing with hydraulic mount for the slave or whatever. It's all just bolts onto the 366. So got my throw bearing and everything all lined up and everything's installed. So next step, I'm just going to remove those oil plugs, and then we're going to go under the hood of the truck. I've got to clean up the input shaft on the SM465. So we're going to continue on here. Alright, so I've got my oil plug in on the bottom here to adapt to take the oil pressure sending unit for a square body truck. I plugged off this top oil port that had a fitting in it, and this one back here by the oil filter. Bell housing, clutch, and everything's installed and mounted on there. And I got to this side, and you probably notice we've got two block heaters on this thing, one on each side. The one on the other side didn't interfere at all with the motor mount, but this side did. As you can see, it's right there. So I just took a cup, I cut out a little chunk of it with an angle grinder, and now it should fit on there. It'll fit over that just perfectly and be mounted about like that. So I'm just gonna bolt this on. I might take down this with an angle grinder, just the stud, make it a little bit shorter so it doesn't interfere with anything. Put this on, then we're going to go under the hood and grind down the input shaft of the transmission, grind the surface rust off it. Alright, we've got everything ready to put in here. I'm just going to roll the truck back and then do a hyperlapse of hopefully dropping in the 366 first try into this thing. I've got some bell housing bolts kicking around. I just need to roll this back so I can get my crane out onto the apron here, and we can see what we can do. It fought a little bit, but it's mounted. The 366 is fully bolted into the engine mounts, both sides. The input shaft slid into the clutch, I think. Everything seems to be okay under here. It's all bolted and attached to itself. And I think we're getting ready to put this thing together for good here. Stay tuned for part 3. Thanks for your continued support of the channel, and we'll see you next time.